Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenna Moralez, and I am the Associate Editor for Facility Set. Thank you so much for listening to the Facilities and Focus podcast. Today, I am with Dave Pettit. He is the Director of Facilities for Joplin Schools in Joplin, Missouri. He has been with the district for about 31 years, and since that time, he's held 5 additional titles, including Lead Carpenter, Supervisor of Craftsmen, Assistant Director of Buildings, Grounds and Transportation, Director of Transportation, and is now the Director of Facilities. But Dave, how are you doing today?
Oh, probably like everybody else that works in the education world. We've kind of gotten school started. We got through Halloween parties, and now we're just gearing up, hoping for a couple of days off for the Thanksgiving break. But things are plugging well. We're staying busy, but already beginning the process of planning ahead for next summer and the construction work and projects that we're going to tackle.
Mhm. So the first quarter is probably over in school, right?
That's correct. First quarter's over. They've held parent-teacher conferences, and kids are finding out whether they're passing or failing.
It's always a tough time.
It is. It is. Always busy.
Yeah, my husband's a teacher, so I kind of always follow along the school like calendar.
Uh-huh.
I thought I would get over that after I graduated college, but nope, still September is the start of the year, not January.
Yeah, everything it feels like in my life is typically based on a school year calendar. My wife is a retired school teacher. My son is a school teacher. My daughter is a former school teacher. So education has kind of encompassed everything that I've done for several years, and look for that to continue for a while.
That that's crazy that how many of your family members are so like intertwined with it.
Exactly. Yeah, I tell people that they all became school teachers. I was not intelligent enough to become a teacher, so I got into facilities.
But facilities is a whole different ball game of like intelligence because I mean, I just read your bio, you had 5 different titles. So
Yeah,
you need to
yeah.
be able to use your brain in a whole different kind of way.
hmm You're able to draw on a lot of unique experiences. I've had a lot of fun times, a lot of difficult times, but hopefully they've all worked together to make me who I am, and the leadership and decision making that I have is based on those past experiences and things I've learned from that.
Mhm. Um, that kind of relates to what we're talking about today for which is disaster recovery. And for our listeners who don't know, Dave is a part of the school district that was hit by this massive tornado back in 2011. I believe they said that it was an E5 length and
Mhm.
that it reached a maximum width of a mile during its path. So just like think about the mile that you had to run in gym, and that's just how big it was. The
Mhm.
tornado damaged nearly 8,000 buildings, destroying at least half of them, including 2 hospitals. The total damage reached about $2.8 billion, making it the costliest single tornado in US history. And it was also one of the deadliest tornadoes in history, killing 158 people. I know that's probably a lot to hear back, but Dave, can you just tell me a little bit about your experience of that day? What was it like?
Yeah. Fortunately, at the time, I live north of town in an adjacent community. So the weekend prior, because the tornado occurred on a Sunday, late afternoon, early evening, but we had left Friday and had weather reports that the possibility for tornadoes was going to be very strong over the course of the weekend, especially into Sunday evening. And so we already had a raised awareness of that. Growing up in the Midwest, I've lived here my whole life. And so being prepared for tornadoes or warnings and watches, I've actually been Joplin tornado was the third close tornado that I've been involved with. In 1975, one hit the town that I grew up in, a town that I was currently worshiping in. My church sustained some damage, and I was actually taking cover for that one. But in this particular event, was taking shelter at my home, I was underneath my house in my crawl space that was set up for us for taking shelter, and just verifying listening to the radio and getting text from my daughter who lived in California that was getting more information than we were getting at the national level. And so the evening came, heard that the tornado, and started hearing about some damage in Joplin. And so my wife and I responded. I felt the need to come into my office to work. So as I came in, I was still north of the damage area. So I came into my location. I was serving as the assistant director of buildings, grounds, and transportation at that point in time. And transportation was a large part of my concentration. And so came in, and we began the process of using our buses for assisting. They were used as ambulances. They were used to transport people because essentially Joplin is a town of approximately 50,000 people. But
Oh.
especially during the weekday, we swell to about 250,000 people
Hmm.
because we are a hub for retail, medical, and entertainment for the entire area. So there's a lot of people that come into town, but it destroyed a third of the town. Kind of came across just the south central part of town, and did a lot of damage. Did a lot of damage.
Tornadoes are one of like my biggest fear. I live in Wisconsin, so like it is a possibility that we might have a tornado. And I remember hearing about it and just thinking how scary that sounded. And I didn't realize a third of the town was destroyed. That is a crazy figure to hear.
Mhm. Yeah, when you talk about, we can show people pictures and we can tell people, but until you stand where the damage is, you don't realize the scale that a third of your town it went across. And because even though the swath of the tornado was a mile wide, you still have some of the peripheral areas that sustain wind damage, and depending on structures and trees and stuff are damaged as well. But it took a pretty good path across our town.
Mm. How was the school?
Yeah, school wise, Joplin Schools had 10 buildings that received damage from the tornado. Six of those were determined to be complete losses. And so we had the challenge of, this was in late May. And so the rest of school was canceled for that year as we began to assess. And due to some great leadership and guidance, we were able to begin the process of coming up with plans for what we were going to do for the future. We essentially had the summer to get things done, and still wanted to get our kids back in school in the fall.
With six of the buildings being declared total losses, were students just sent to different schools then? Or were you able to create different learning spaces?
It's unbelievable what occurred during the course of essentially those 3 months prior to the fall session. We repurposed a building that had kind of been used for an office area to become a ninth and 10th grade campus. We split the high school across two buildings. The 11th and 12th graders we remodeled a space at our mall that
Mhm.
was one of the anchor stores. And so that was remodeled to be a full and working campus for our kiddos. We had another building that we were essentially getting ready to mothball, that we pressed into service and split an elementary school between that building and another building. Our middle school that was destroyed, we were able to come up within our industrial complex for the city, had a spec building that had a shell, but no floor in it. It was still rock and dirt. They were able to pour concrete. We were able to design the interior of that building. And all of those things took place within a 3-month period that we held school that fall in different locations. We were at a mall, we were at a spec building, we were at older buildings that we put some effort into to prepare. And we had everybody back in a building when we came back that fall.
That's incredible. Those buildings are still used today, though, right?
No, not most of them. We did some rebuilding with the elementary schools. One of the buildings that was used for the 9th and 10th grade campus has been repurposed for it was an existing building, actually get over 100 years old, that we were using. And so those have been repurposed, and we've moved out of all those and now have fantastic facilities that were rebuilt post-tornado, or brand new facilities that were built after the tornado.
Very cool. What was your role in that summer? How did you help? Because I'm assuming that you didn't sit by idly.
I did not sit by idly. It was for the first, since I kind of dealt with transportation at that point in time, the first 40 hours or so after, we ran shuttle buses round the clock. We had people that were displaced. They'd had vehicles destroyed, didn't have ways to get to family. And so we ran shuttle buses. We ran buses for people to get to triage units or to the hospital that wasn't damaged. So we just kind of ran for about 40 hours straight and did what we could in getting people taken care of and places that they needed to be. Within about 2.5 weeks after the tornado, we set up a summer school, and we actually held summer school over the course of that entire summer up to and including right at the start of the fall semester, in an effort, one, to give our kids, they didn't get to finish their school year, so to speak, but also kids were trying to give some normalcy to. And so we tried to get them back in the classrooms with the summer school so that parents could deal with insurance companies and with rebuilding, and the folks that experienced that damage had so many things that they were going on, that if they could know that their kids were safe and going to be fed, that took a load off their plate. And so we carried that out for the rest of that summer. And then everything that was going on behind the scenes with rebuilding, remodeling, and taking over those buildings that we hadn't prepared to use. So we jumped in and did all that. So it was an extremely busy summer that we spent, but the fruit of our labors all came together when we were able to hold school that fall.
Right. Did you cry? I feel like I would have cried at the beginning of the school year.
There are still times that emotionally, that day doesn't ever come and go without my thoughts. The frustration, the loss of life. We lost some students. We lost a staff member that was killed in the tornado that worked for Joplin Schools. Emotionally, there are times that it brings tears to my eyes. We have a video it's actually on YouTube that you can watch called Bus Rescue, and talks about how our transportation department sent some heroes out in the dark, in the middle of the night, trying to drive across debris and downed power lines. And one thing I will note, and I noted in the video as well, is that during the course of that 40 hours that we ran our school buses, We never did come up with a flat tire, to the best of my knowledge, even with
Wow.
all the stuff
That's
that we did. I
man,
I don't know
what
how we,
wheels?
yeah, buses being used as ambulances, and we had special education buses with chair lifts. And so since the hospital
Mm.
received a huge amount of damage, we were able to help them evacuate folks using our wheelchair lift. And so we did what needed to be done. We took care of our community.
Do you feel kind of changed as a person after experiencing that?
Oh, definitely. I think it changed me. Like I said, this was really my third tornado, but the amount of damage and involvement with that changed me personally, and my approach, and realizing, it kind of causes you to take a step back and look at your life, and think about where you've been and where you're going. But it definitely changed me professionally. A lot of things and a lot of changes that we implemented, both buildings and transportation and just district wise, that changed after that. And my professional world, um, uh, that'll never go back to being the same. And some of the things that we learned, we have been, we have shared with other people in hopes that we can help people avoid some of the challenges, and maybe some of those things that we weren't as well prepared for, that we can pass that information along.
How do you guys approach drills now? For our listeners that don't know, the Midwest takes tornado drills very seriously. Like those sirens are going off weekly on Wednesdays at noon. At least that's how it is in Wisconsin. But how does your district approach tornado drills now, knowing what you have learned?
Yeah. Well, I believe tornado drills, because of it's not like tornadoes are, tornado warnings and watches are fairly common around here, but people being experienced with especially an F5 tornado is very unusual. So we'd always took those serious before, but because of the damage that Joplin sustained, we take that extremely. So we don't have students now in the school that were necessarily a part of what we did, because for a while tornado drills were very traumatic for a lot of those students.
Oh, I
And
bet.
so now we've kind of moved past a lot of that trauma, but because of the stories and the videos and all of the social media where kids can go back and look at what happened to Joplin, it still can cause some anxiety for some of our younger students, but we still take them very seriously. But positive note out of that is that all of our elementary schools, post tornado, we were able to partner with FEMA and receive funding that we have tornado safe rooms at all
Oh,
of our elementary school facilities. So the certainty of being able to take shelter that we're prepared for is puts our mind at ease a little more with that. And the kids have gotten used to going to those. Most of those are gym areas, but they are tornado safe rooms and rated
mhm.
for the winds that would be sustained in an F5 tornado. And so we were able to get those built. And so most of those also serve as community safe rooms. So now when we have drills, the kids are used to going to that area and having a safe area to take
Right.
shelter. But then also when we have tornado warning, we have set up a system where our doors automatically unlock for those so that the community can come in as well. And so the students are getting accustomed that if there's a tornado warning during the day, we've had one in the past few months where outside parents, community members came in. So we keep our students on one side, and those community members are able to come in and take shelter in those areas as well.
Mhm. That's incredible. I do have a little silly question. Do you still make the kids go into like that crouching position during a drill?
No, they usually have them sit and just take shelter. They're within the tornado safe room. One of the things that we learned post tornado from we have camera video that was with security cameras. You know, the common thing, especially back when I was in school, was they put you in the hallway, put you in that crouch position,
Mhm.
and just stack you up along. But what we found post tornado with the damage that was experienced and with the video that we had, those hallways become wind tunnels. Um,
Oh my God.
and debris blows down through there at extreme rates of speed. And so, what we thought we were doing probably to take care of our students was probably putting them in an area of risk for glass, um, other impalement type objects that could blow through there, and just the amount of damage because that wind did get tunneled through there because it would blow doors open, and then
Mhm.
that's where the air would go through. So that's a big take that we took away from that. We used to in the busing realm, used to remove our students from the bus and take
Mhm.
shelter in a low-lying area if there was an imminent tornado. We've since changed that, and we keep the students on the bus. Buses are built like tanks. There's a reason they cost as much as they do, but there's also a lot of engineering that goes into those. And so our students are better protected on the bus, even if it would roll the bus or anything like that. They're better protected because of what we found out is that taking shelter off the bus puts you at risk, especially if you're in a low-lying area of water movement and flash flooding, as well as debris flying. And so kids can crouch down in the bus and stay protected within the shell and the
Mhm.
engineering of that bus, and are typically safer than if we remove them from the bus. Now, we always try to get them to one of our community safe rooms if possible. But if
Right.
there's no other chance to do that, they shelter in place on the bus.
My college town had a tornado. Gosh, I guess it's now 10 years ago. And one of my best friends drove through it because she was trying to get home. At that
Mhm.
exact moment, the tornado just like kind of went through her car. And she said that she just stopped in the middle of the road and like pushed her seat all the way back and just like crouched down and could like feel the glass busted through all her windows and she was just covered. And I was like, that is horrific. That is horrific.
Yeah, it's very traumatic to live through a tornado, and get to experience, the amount of destruction that happens with that between wind and rain and all that. As we talk about natural disasters, you have hurricanes that you get a chance to be prepared for.
Mhm.
Maybe a couple of days, but the amount of damage with a hurricane is huge, and the amount of flooding and all that. But you have a little chance to prepare. Tornadoes can crop up so quickly and so fast that you are not prepared. They may not have the widespread amount of damage, but the uncertainty of when they're going to crop up and where they're going once they do come, just keeps that uncertainty level so high that it's difficult to really know and understand what that tornado is going to do.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a Midwest thing for people to like just go out during a storm and just kind of look at it or chase it like the storm chasers. Do you just take do you just like seek shelter right away now? Because I would.
I For the most part, I do now because I take serious how I love the fact that we're able, usually the coverage now with local radio, television, social media can get you a lot of information in a short amount of time. Our local radio station, news station, KZRG, was instrumental in helping people be prepared, and then post tornado, making sure that they stayed on the air. But you still just don't know when that happens. But you got to take it serious. And here at the school district, we definitely take it serious. That if there's a warning, we get our kids to a safe area. We shelter in place. Even we had one come about the time school was supposed to let out. You keep those kids there and take care of them. You invite the parents that are there to pick up kids to come in the safe room with you so that everybody can be protected. But we just shut everything down and make sure that we're sheltering in place to make sure that we take care of our students and our staff, and everybody can be safe. I would much rather take shelter and then not have needed to take shelter than to find out that I really wish I had of, or that we'd have had our students take shelter.
Right. How did the community come together after the tornado? Do you remember?
Community here was amazing. The resiliency, I think, of just the work ethic of folks around here. Within just hours after the tornado, there were people out. Of course, you got to remember electricity was out for widespread, and so it was very dark. But chainsaws, flashlights, um, everything started coming out. Removing debris. The city's response was huge, and that they were starting to clear pathways so that traffic in and out. There were still rescues going on. There were still safety checks going on. People just jumped in and did what needed to be done. We didn't wait for FEMA or emergency response to come in and tell us, the steps we needed to take. We jumped in. Um, we had plans in place. I tell people you can be prepared, but you're never prepared for what
Right.
actually happens. But whatever preparedness that you do puts you that much ahead. And we had become accustomed to that and had done that here, but still learned some things after the fact that we might have been able to have done a little better or been more prepared with.
Mm. How do you maintain safety in a situation like that? Because I'm sure a lot of like the waste materials can be deemed like hazardous.
Hmm. Yeah, there were there was a lot of work that went on trying to secure the areas around our buildings post tornado. Debris was just everywhere, streets, trees, everywhere, and so people just had to start with the cleanup. A lot of equipment was brought in. The utility companies just were unbelievable with their response in coming in and making sure that things were taken care of and that people were safe. Shutting down of gas lines because of damage to buildings and the chance of fire. Making sure that power grids were shut down until safe ways of shutting that off were they were able to come up with those. And then we just with our locations that were damaged, that we found ways to secure those, fence those off, and take care of just keeping people away till we could ascertain whether that building was going to be able to be reused or not, or if we were going to have the damage enough that we were going to have to replace that building.
I know that you very quickly mentioned disaster recovery plans. How often do you review them?
Yeah. It's typically ongoing, I would say, but we also get together and go over plans. We send out reminders to people about those things, whether you have disaster recovery. Each one of our building locations go over, whatever disaster it may be, reunification set up with our students and getting them back with parents. if because it could be fire, it could be active shooter, it could be tornado, lots of things it could affect. So we have a lot of those plans in place. They practice those, but we have those, and we go over those at least once a year to make sure that everybody, one, knows how that does and what everybody's role is as those plans come together.
How do you address these plans knowing how emotional they can be for kids?
Our staff members are very in touch with the fact that these, even the drills, can elicit an emotional response from our students and also from our staff members. So we always leave ourselves open for making sure that we take care of those students or staff who have an aversion to going through that process, and making sure that they are emotionally supported. We have in place mental health professionals that can assist us with that, and making we support our folks, because everybody, because of the scale of what happened, everybody was touched in some way through the tornado. They either knew someone whose house sustained damage, knew somebody who was killed in the tornado, and so there are all these emotional ties. Even though that was 2011, even 13 years later, we still have those connections, and so making sure that we recognize that we respond accordingly to assist those people as they work through that.
And 13 years doesn't even seem that long ago, I guess, when you put it into like terms of students, that's a seventh grader, but that's a history that they're always going to know.
Right. The fact I like about our community is we still talk about the tornado, and we want to have learned from what happened here in Joplin, but it's not what defines us.
Right.
What we want, what defines us is not the tornado, but the resiliency of the human spirit that came with our community after the fact, and the rebuild that we did, the new schools, the businesses that rebuilt. There's still things that are affected today. You even, I'll be driving to one of my buildings to check on something, and go through that area, because there still really aren't trees, which
Mhm.
we were so well known for, and sometimes that just kind of hits you as a reminder that we've moved past that, and you've rebuilt a lot of those things, but you still
Mhm.
have that feeling. This was where the damage came through. And so, like I said, we want to remember it, but we don't want it to just overcome us, but or define us.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day. I know how busy you are to talk with me.
Well, if anyone can draw anything out of anything I've said about this, it is well worth the time and effort of getting to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And Dave responds really fast to emails. So just in case anyone does reach out. But thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Good to chat with you again.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Welton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsel, Jeff Forden, Joe McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. If you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email Mackenna at mackenna.moralez@tradepress.com.